Fair warning, the first episode we're going to talk about today is pretty heavy. But I promise we'll have more fun with the second one. Let's get to it, shall we?
I am the right hand of vengeance.
Intensify the probe.
What about Buck?
It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Welcome to the Philippines in 1945. Not the most ideal vacation spot if you're looking for rest and relaxation. An infantry platoon has just returned from the front lines, 4 souls lighter than when it set out. Lieutenant William Fitzgerald is taking the deaths especially bad, and after being grilled by his CO, Captain Dick York... Okay, the character's real name is Captain Riker, but that really confuses my Trekkie brain, so I'm just gonna keep calling him Captain York. The lieutenant admits that he's been cursed with some kind of precognitive ability to foresee the deaths of the men around him, that with just a look at their faces, he can somehow sense who is going to die. The only evidence he's able to supply is a list of the 4 dead men from the day's excursion, a list he claims to have written down the night before. The next day, Captain York goes to a medical station and asks Captain Gunther, a doctor, to take a look at Fitz to make sure he's still fit for service. It turns out Fitz is already there, checking on his wounded man Smitty. Smitty's wounds appear to be severe enough that he's going to be sent home, but not so bad that he's at any risk of dropping dead at a moment's notice. However, as Fitz cheerfully bids the young man happy trails, he looks at his face and sees what he doesn't want to see. Moments later, Smitty suddenly dies. You know, I try to keep things light and jokey in these mini-reviews, but this episode's not making it easy. Fitz and York meet downstairs. As the captain tries to reassure him, Fitz says he's not looking for an explanation. He just wants his captain, his friend, to believe him. Dr. Gunther then arrives, and Fitz gets weirdly confrontational, leading to Gunther making the reasonable argument that Fitz is cracking under the pressure of war. Fitz doesn't necessarily disagree, he even says he'd be okay if they poked his eyes out so he wouldn't have to look at people anymore, but frustrated by the captains seeming to disbelieve him, he leaves in a huff. Back at the command post, Captain York starts debriefing for a new mission, with Fitz in attendance. Fitz wonders whether he's fit to lead a platoon, and he then sees that his captain is now marked for death. Fitz urges him not to go, but Captain York won't hear of it. After angrily making Fitz report to his platoon and prepare to leave, York then takes a moment to leave behind pictures of his family back home, showing us that maybe he does believe Fitz after all.
All right, Sergeant, let's go.
Yes, sir. Let's go! Okay, load 'em up! Let's go! Load 'em up!
Ride 'em and roll.
Sure enough, when the mission is over, Captain York doesn't come back. The mission was a success, though, and the general visits the camp to congratulate Fitz and the men on a job well done. The two commiserate over the loss of the captain, and the general then makes the biggest understatement of the episode.
Man, war stinks.
Captain Gunther is also there, telling Fitz to report back to medical for a 3-week evaluation. As he packs up his things, Fitz then sees death in his own reflection. His driver arrives, and after a dismissive conversation about how they'll be driving over a minefield, they set out, Fitz stoically accepting his fate. A few minutes later, the men still at camp hear a distant explosion and shrug it off as thunder. Let me be real for a second. I consider myself something of a skeptic in that I want there to be rational explanations for things. But I think one of the things that makes this episode stand out is that it's terrifyingly plausible. I could easily believe that somebody who has seen too much war could start picking up on subconscious cues that foreshadow a person's doom. And it wouldn't be like fortune-telling or anything supernatural. It would be more like that cat you see at a nursing home who just happens to sit by somebody who's about to die. A guy could have gotten too loose, too confident, or too tired, which could lead to the kinds of mistakes that would make death inevitable. And maybe, just maybe, somebody could start to notice the warning signs. There's also the captain's apparent acceptance of his death, which stands as a metaphor for what a soldier faces every day they set out to do their duty. Death is part of the job, and because the captain knows and accepts this sacrifice, the mission is a success. It's kind of what it's all about. This episode was written by Rod Serling, who was himself stationed as an Army infantryman in the Philippines during World War II. It's a deeply personal and heart-wrenching story, and though it definitely fits into the style of the series, it almost feels as though it's its own thing, its own, well, testament. Like I said, I can't really joke about this episode too much, because it is extremely powerful, and in all seriousness, it's one of the best half hours of television ever made, full stop.
Can we have dynamic growth, low unemployment, and reasonably stable prices? Write for this free booklet to American Assembly, Columbia University, New York City.
3 men are busy staring at a bunch of props left over from the set of Forbidden Planet as their rocket descends through the atmosphere of some unknown asteroid, which we are repeatedly told is 655 million miles from Earth. For reference, that places it somewhere between Jupiter and Saturn, assuming they're on the plane of the ecliptic. Once they land, they learn the air outside is breathable, and conditions are basically perfect. Since they're out of fuel and will soon run out of their own air, meaning if the asteroid won't support them they'll inevitably die a slow death, they decide to throw caution to the wind and just walk outside without spacesuits. This is such an obvious solution to the why do explorers go out onto alien planets without their helmets trope that I'm surprised we don't see it more often. I'm looking at you, Alien prequels. As they exit their craft, not only is the air breathable and the climate comfortable, but there appears to be abundant Earth-like life alongside an early 20th century farmhouse replete with tractor. The stuffed dog is a bit weird, but it's nothing compared to the first human they meet, who is less responsive to stimuli than Norma Bates. Not getting anything out of the farmer, they go exploring and find a similarly frozen fisherman, freeze themselves for a moment, and then hear a band playing in the distance.
You hear that? The music, a band!
They follow it into a small town where apparently a new mayor is being inaugurated. The music, though, isn't coming from the frozen band, but from a nearby speaker. So I used to work at Disney World, and I can confirm that this is what happens. At the end of the day, all of the employees, cast members, freeze in place and wait for the park to open. The music ends and the trio enters what I assume is the town hall or something, which is filled to capacity with immobile spectators watching the mayor hold his hat over a balcony like Blanket Jackson. Some of them are blinking, but let's pretend we don't notice. The captain posits that maybe everybody is moving in extreme slow motion, but then they notice that the nearby clock has no hands.
Now show me your hands! Show me your hands!
The men then separate, with one checking out an obvious poker cheat, another peeping on a dancing couple, and the third taking to the stage to try to win a beauty contest in his space uniform. After he freaks out at the inexplicability of it all and runs off, we finally get a glimpse of one character who can still move, and it's none other than Cecil Kellaway. The 3 astronauts find each other again and walk up to a beautiful mansion where Kellaway is waiting for them. He introduces himself as Jeremy Wickwire and invites them inside, assuring them there's nothing to be afraid of.
There's nothing to be afraid of, I assure you.
Wickwire starts saying cryptic things about how this area was built for someone who wound up going instead to the medieval section to slay dragons, explaining that there are many different themed areas like Rome and the Old West. Those Westworld vibes you're getting? They're not that far off the mark. When the astronauts try to tell Wickwire who they are, he becomes just as confused, and casually asks the question on everyone's mind.
Tell me, did they ever have that atomic war?
He then drops the bombshell, pun very much intended, that they are in a cemetery. He promises to explain further, but first he gets them drinks and makes a toast. As they drink, the old man totally doesn't look sus. After some more awkward questioning, Wickwire finally explains the whole thing. In the 1970s, a cemetery was built on a distant asteroid where wealthy elites could spend eternity frozen in whatever time and place they want. Most of the immobile people aren't real, but people like the quote-unquote mayor are. As for Wickwire, he's actually an android caretaker. Oh, and he poisoned the drinks. Cut to some time later, as Wickwire dusts their preserved bodies, frozen forever on their ship, with creepy smiles plastered on their faces. I know I sound like a broken record when I say things like this, but this is another really fun episode that I absolutely love. It's a puzzle that dares you to figure out the explanation before the great Cecil Kellaway finally explains it. It also has one of those disturbing twist endings that are a hallmark of the entire series, though we've only seen it a handful of times so far. It even kind of feels like a classic Star Trek episode, albeit without Kirk heroically saving the day. And that's all I have on The Purple Testament and Elegy. Now, as always, do all those YouTubey things and check out my Patreon. And all that other good stuff. But until next time, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
Well, as for me, it's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live here.